Good morning, good day to you, wherever you happen to be. I'm David Cory, and I'm here with my colleague, Kim Cairns. We're with the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, and we're here this morning to talk about assertiveness, which is one of the 15 competencies that are measured by the Bar-On model or the MHS model of EQ, or emotional intelligence. And so Kim, one of the things that I was thinking about my own assertiveness, I was kind of guided as a young kid by a saying that I heard early on, and I don't know whether I read it was a bumper sticker or one of those funny posters, but the saying was, "It is better to remain silent and thought a fool than to speak up and remove all doubt." So that kind of was my guiding principle as a kid. So I was shy, and I didn't want to speak up, and I didn't want to let people know what my views or thoughts or feelings were, certainly, and I would be very reluctant to speak up for myself, and that's one interesting part about EQ is the way that we develop a relationship with these competencies as young kids from our families or from significant others in life. And how about you, Kim? Were you an assertive kid?
Well, I think I wasn't, perhaps until I got into my early teens, when there was definitely a shift that happened. But I think that that's that phrase resonates in my mind too. In addition to growing up in a Western Canadian family in the 50s and early 60s, there was that whole notion of being polite and not being brash or overly forward in your interactions, and I think as a kid that was conveyed to me by my parents with regard to adults more than with other kids. But that was definitely a factor. It was that generational respect, and respect meaning to them silent most of the time, answering questions politely but not doing too much inquiry.
Well, and we're from that generation, Kim, where our parents went by that old maxim that children should be seen and not heard. So there's that sort of generational or societal impact on us as well. So imagine learning how to be assertive or speaking up for yourself, or actually contributing to relationships and being a sort of a mutual partner under those conditions.
Right. And I think too, there's that Canadian notion that assertiveness really means aggressive. It's like a really hard time in our Canadian minds to differentiate between the two. So they get lumped together, which I think causes further confusion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, around the world, we're known for our politeness, and oftentimes we think that what that means is that we're silent and that we go along with everything that happens, and we're nice about it. Well, actually, that's not the most effective way to be in a relationship, and it's important that we learn how to say what it is that we need and want. And we covered emotional expression, and it's important to differentiate a bit between emotional expression, which of course is about expressing all of the various emotions and whatever our emotional reactions to situations and circumstances and people happens to be. But then there's this assertiveness piece. So Kim, how would you differentiate assertiveness from emotional expression?
Well, I think, from my perspective, Dave, I think emotional expression can be part of assertiveness. Probably definitely is part of assertiveness. But I would take it back a step further, actually, to that emotional self-awareness piece. So if I'm in a tense meeting where there are some very different viewpoints on an issue, I'm going to have some feelings that are going to be arising within me. So important for me to pay attention to that. What's causing that? And how am I going to be able to express that in a straightforward, calm, and rational way that portrays my perspective given the information I have now? So to me, it's the combination of all of those facets. So there's that self-management piece with regard to assertiveness, and I think it's once I'm clear about what it is I'm feeling, and then I get clear in my own head about how I'm going to express that, then the assertiveness comes out quite naturally. The other driving force, I think, within that is what's my desired outcome in that situation. And so it's not about just proclaiming my point of view. It's about stating it with invitation to hear the other person's perspective or the other people's perspective gathered around the table. So assertiveness really is not an end of a conversation. It's actually the beginning of a dialogue, right? I'm stating what's going on for me and inviting people's response to that.
And inherent in the word is this notion of asserting oneself. So it is what I would like to see, what I would like to have done, what I would like you to do, what I would like to happen in more of the big picture. And you've talked before about this kind of assertiveness is not blurting. It's not just, this is what's in my head and I'm just getting it out on the table. It's having more of a kind of a meta view. And certainly in leadership, we talk about this idea that it's about being assertive, knowing where you want to go with this. So it's about deepening the relationship. It's about adding to the conversation. It's about contributing to a team process. But it's certainly not about just blurting because for the sake of blurting. And we've heard, and you and I both heard people say things like, "Well, it's what's honest," as a way of excusing perhaps an assertive statement which is aggressive or mean or does harm in some way. And it's just no excuse.
Right.
It doesn't sort of further or deepen the relationship, which is really one of the powerful things that assertiveness can do.
Yeah, Dave, and I think that's it's interesting to think about how do I actually make that happen. And I think it is about having some clear thoughts in my head that are going to be articulated. And as I'm stating that, I'm also paying attention within the room, within that conversation, to what the other person's response is. So I'm not just solely focused on what is going on in my own head. I am focused on that, but I'm also paying attention to how that's being received. And if I'm seeing somebody is, leaning back or appearing like they're confused or upset with what I'm saying, that's a great time to just break off. It seems like what I'm saying right now is not landing well. What's going on for you in this moment? So it's not about getting my whole set of thoughts out. It's about paying attention to how that's being received and inquiring if there seems to be some mix between the person nodding their head and the different look that they have in their eyes or the different set that they have in their jaw.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Kim, because of course this is a mistake that is often made when people think they're being assertive, and they say, "What? I was just being assertive. I was just saying, what I wanted to happen, needed to happen." But if you don't pay attention to how this is landing on others, how it's being received, whether you are again, causing people to sort of back away or causing people to perhaps rethink their own assertiveness, then that's probably closer to what we would call aggression. And of course, any kind of assertive statement which you think is assertive but causes harm to another, that's aggression. And it's the idea of the assertiveness is in the eye of the beholder or the receiver of the message, and not in the sender. So you can think you're being very assertive when in fact you're being very aggressive as perceived by others. And so absolutely, the empathy piece is critical.
Yes. And it is about being fully present in that conversation. about really paying attention to what's going on. And I do like what you regularly say is, I don't get to decide whether my statements are assertive. The person or people that I'm speaking to get to decide that. So there again is that essential part of paying attention to how it seems to be being received.
Yeah, let's talk for a moment, Kim, about the assertiveness has a bad reputation. We think of assertive people as kind of too direct, or it's like they're always talking about what they want. But really, let me give you an example. I happen to be in a relationship with a life partner who is quite assertive, and let me tell you the benefits of that. Is that and it's not my go-to competency. It's a struggle for me. I struggle to be assertive, and so the downside of that is that in a relationship where two people are contributing to the relationship and to the two-way notion of the dialogue, really, if much of the information is coming from one way, then there's this remaining in this position of wondering what's going on the other side. What are the thoughts? What are the opinions? What are the and let me give you a mundane example. So my wonderful partner will sometimes say, "Where do you want to go for dinner?" And I'll say, "Oh, I don't know, and anywhere is fine." And really, what that is an abdication of my responsibility to be a contributing member to the relationship. And so, that's an area where assertiveness is really an important part of relationships, where people have an obligation to contribute and be a mutually contributing part of the relationship. And I think it's quite common in relationships, Kim, where one person just says whatever. And they think that that's just the way they are, that's their preference or their tendency, when really it's probably not fair.
Yeah.
For the other person.
Yeah.
And so it's a real effort, and something that I really have to work on, to be a contributing member of the relationship and say what it is that I want. Now we've got something to negotiate. We've got something that we can discuss. We've got some way for both of us to win, rather than to what the less assertive person might think, speaking on behalf of all less assertive people everywhere. Not really. But it's like we might think that they get their way, when in fact we have we've not taken up our responsibility in the relationship. So I think that's an important part.
Yeah,
as well.
I think it's huge, Dave. And I think what you've described there is that dangerous slippery slope of sliding into passive aggressive behavior. Because I'm having that swirl of thoughts in my head, I'm not articulating any of what's going on for me, and that's where it starts to creep in. Well, you should know what I want to do. You should know that, because we've been together for a while. So you should know what I want for dinner, and that voice is going on in my head, but none of that's coming out of my mouth. And so I think for me, what helps in those situations where that tendency to withdraw perhaps is how I value when somebody is being clear in their communication with me. I value that. It's important information. It actually energizes me to hear what's going on for somebody else. So to be able to flip that around and say, well, that needs to be my contribution back too. It can't be just one-sided.
Yes. And as human beings, we're programmed to get our needs met. And there's really only a very few ways of getting our needs met, and you've mentioned them. One is aggressively. I just take it. The opposite end of that continuum is passive. I sit back and I wait for those moments when my needs get met, and they just happen. And then sort of an in-between, a balance, or if you will, and I've mentioned it before, I'll mention it again, is the Venn diagram, the two circles where one of which is my needs solely, the other is others' needs solely, and it's that overlap, which is where assertiveness is, where I'm balancing my needs against the needs of others, and I'm speaking, communicating in such a way as to allow people to really hear what I'm saying. It's like, that's a reasonable request. I think we can work with that, or that's great information. Now we have something to dialogue about or discuss. But in the absence of again, making it known, because we're terrible mind readers, is to put that on the table, is to bring that up. And
Yeah.
that's very, very tough. Why do you think it's so tough for people to be assertive, Kim?
Well, I think there can be that tendency to, if I really state what's going on for me and somebody doesn't like it, they may make sport of me. They may, then I'm going to feel shame around that. Yeah. Those voices, I think, are the ones that tend to come into focus to stop us from talking. So again, I think it's a great time to actually dispute those thoughts and those voices in my head and say, is that really the case? What's the worst possible outcome here? Well, they're not as drastic as what I initially thought. So, and what are the benefits of actually stating what's going on for me? So it is disputing those thoughts and feelings and voices that are internal. Right. And I think that's maybe one of the fastest, most effective ways to disrupt that process of remaining passive.
Right. And if we don't regard ourselves as worthy and deserving, and if we struggle with self-regard, how we view ourselves in the world, then that's going to be really difficult to do. And so again, all these interconnections and really, one of the reasons why we love this model so much is that there are all these interconnections and combinations. And certainly it's very difficult to improve one's assertiveness without talking about and without working on self-regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the other part of that, it is self-regard, but there's also a cultural pressure to present as fully formed and fully functioning all the time, knowledgeable about everything, and articulate all the time. So I think if we can just, get to that place where I'm going to be a bit more flexible with myself. It's okay to say, well, this is how I'm feeling right now, given the information I have at this point. I'm open to gathering more information. I'm open to hearing your viewpoint, but here's where I sit with regard to this issue right now. And if we use phrases like that, that invites dialogue again. That's not being locked into a position. That's just clearly stating where I'm at right now and willing to move on that.
Right. And if we think that by controlling the impulse to speak up, that's a good thing, we might want to rethink that for a moment. And what we know is that with respect to any of the 15, you can have an unhealthy higher score, which is reflected on the EQI that way. And it looks, okay, I have a high score in impulse control, great. But what if that impulse control prevents you from being assertive when you need to be assertive?
Yes.
So again, it's like rethinking that. Okay, so am I controlling my impulse to speak up too much? And should I actually be speaking up in this situation about this issue, etc.?
Right. And I think that, you can look around a meeting room and see the eye rolls and the eyes glaze over when people get into situations that have been turbulent or at issue before, and that to me then is an indicator that, okay, that's going on for you. You have feelings about that, and yet your body language is saying it all, but you're not articulating what's going on. So again, you're not contributing to any kind of change that you might like to see.
Yes.
Are you going to choose to be part of the solution, or are you going to choose to continue to be part of the problem? So I think it's important to have key phrases in our head that are reminders in those situations. How do I want to operate in this context?
Yes. And another one of those phrases comes to mind, and that's being comfortable with the uncomfortable. Sometimes it's uncomfortable speaking up. and you're taking a bit of a risk. It's kind of scary. You have to feel the fear and do it anyway. And it's one of those things that we don't welcome into the staff meeting room. It's like if everyone is non-assertive, things go smoother. It's like, okay, let's just revert to that good old command and control leadership style, and we'll all just do whatever the leader says and things will go smoothly. Well, that's not helpful. It doesn't contribute to change. It maintains the status quo, and what we want to do is continually look at how we can improve, not just do things the way we've always done them for that sake.
Well, and Dave, I think, there's a real opportunity there if I tend to be the quiet one and not say very much. And I actually go to work on my assertiveness capacity. A great way to speak up for the first time in a meeting is to say, I don't usually speak up in meetings. I've tended to be really quiet. And now I'm realizing that that's not a great way to be part of this team. So I'd really like to say right now what's going on for me with regard to this situation right now. So you're actually putting it out there that you are feeling a bit uncomfortable about it. It's not your default way of operating.
Right.
And there's something freeing about just putting that out on the table too.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And another competency, tie in optimism with that, and the idea that, you know what, this is going to be a good thing. When I say this, when I say what it is that I need, when I say what it is that I want in the situation, this is going to be a good thing. This is, at least we can discuss it, we can negotiate around it, we can work out something that works for everyone, that addresses the needs around the table. But before the assertiveness, we can't do anything. We can feel sorry for ourselves that our needs aren't being met.
Yes. Well, and as leaders, it's so important to invite assertiveness from the people that you're leading. An open invitation to be assertive, and then to demonstrate that you're actually going to follow through on that.
Yes,
you're going to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. That leaders create the context in which people can be assertive, or the opposite. They can create that context in which it's not okay to be assertive, where that command and control leader is teaching you not to be assertive. And of course, there are ways to speak truth to power, and that's probably a whole other episode, speaking truth to power, but it's about assertiveness, and it's about being assertive in a way that is going to be effective, ultimately, using some of the skills that we've talked about already. Well, Kim, it looks like we're coming up to the end of our allotted time. What should people take a look for if they're looking for books or other resources on assertiveness? What could we point in their direction?
Well, Dave, I think one great resource is the EQ Edge 3rd edition. There's a chapter devoted to every competency. There's some really good information in there. There are some great exercises and skill building approaches at the end of each chapter too. So I would really recommend that people take a look at that. It's just a valuable resource to have around. In some of the conversation books, the crucial conversations, the fierce conversations, I think make for really good reading in terms of changing my mindset about what assertiveness really is, that it's not aggression. So I think again, there's some valuable reading there. And
if you're uncomfortable with the idea of assertiveness, Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communications is a fantastic way of looking at assertiveness as a critical component of effective communication. And I really like his ideas of violence and nonviolence. He talks about when you start to move towards aggressiveness, that's violent. and it's about remaining nonviolent. And he's got some great models and tips and tricks and ideas that are really helpful. Probably one of my favorite communication books is Difficult Conversations. One of the first ones I picked up on effective conversations, and does a real nice job of showing assertiveness and empathy, and how those are two critical tools to effective communication.
And the other thing that comes to mind, Dave, is I think we all know people in our lives that are assertive in a way that feels good to us. Like, we recognize it.
Yes.
So approach one of those people and say, I really admire the way you're able to articulate what's going on for you. I'd really like to go to work on that for myself. Can you give me any thoughts around what goes on for you to enable you to be able to do that?
Yeah, great tip, Kim. Yeah, I like that.
So, and we all have that availability. We all know somebody in our life who we enjoy. It's like that, wow, yeah, that really makes sense to me. That was important to coming to some kind of solution in this situation. We can all conjure up somebody in our lives that exhibits those kind of qualities. So,
absolutely. Well, Kim, to bring our conversation to a close, a few things that we'd like people to know about. One is that again, we're interested in learning about your stories of assertiveness, stories of the other competencies we're going to be talking about in coming episodes. The next one being independence. So, let us know what independence means to you. How does that play a role in where you are today, and talk a little bit about independence. We'll share your information. We'll if you've got some resources that you've created around independence, to help people with their independence, we'd love to share that with others, and we'll certainly put that in our post-show notes. And you can email me, which would be simple, david@eitrainingcompany.com. And you can send us a tweet. We're on Twitter. My Twitter handle is David R. Cory. And Kim, I'll let you share your contact information.
Yeah, my email address is kim@eitrainingcompany.com. Twitter, which I'm not always good at using on a regular basis, but I'm at EQ2lead, and the 2 being the number, not the letters. So would be really happy to hear from anybody with their thoughts around assertiveness, around any of the competencies, around how EI is unfolding in your life, either professional or personal. We're always interested in keeping in touch with folks. So thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to future contact.
So join us in 2 weeks, where we'll be talking about independence. But we're going to have to do that on the Thursday before the Friday, because we have a wonderful event with a wonderful client on that particular day. So join us on the Thursday, and we'll get information out about that broadcast. And until then, thanks for joining us. Thanks from beautiful Vancouver, where I am today, and Kim in sunny Victoria. We look forward to the next time that we get together in 2 weeks on the Thursday rather than the Friday. So with that, I'll sign off and wish you a wonderful weekend, as it happens to be a Friday today. So until next time, bye from EI Training Company.